For joining Just Ask, Best Eggs video series, where we ask experts important and sometimes embarrassing financial questions on behalf of our customers. I'm Sabrina DeVito, your host of this series. Today, I am extremely delighted to have with us Traci Kelly from Kelly Greene, and she is joining us to talk about how you would develop a financial action plan if you experience a sudden drop or loss of income. So Traci, we are delighted again to have you here with us today. And I'd love to get started by hearing a little bit about your background and a little bit about your company.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for inviting me to be on this series. I think it's a really critical topic. I have been in the financial and insurance industry almost 20 years now. I have an independent, holistic financial firm. And I'd like to say that what that means is I work for my clients and not necessarily a bank or a financial institution or anything like that. I am very, 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 very strategic, strategy-based. So there's not one product that I favor. There's not one company that I favor. It's all about finding a strategy and being proactive. And believe it or not, most of our work now is done this way, virtually.
Excellent. Well, then this works out just fine. So listen, we know in general, Americans don't typically have a lot of savings. You know, a lot of Americans, I think it's something like close to 40% of Americans wouldn't even be able to cover an unexpected $1,000 expense, something to that effect. So when they actually experience a very unexpected drop or loss of their income, it can be quite devastating to them. So I'd love to hear from your point of view, what are some early action steps that someone could take if they find themselves in this situation?
Absolutely. You know, we all know life happens, and it happens sometimes at the most inopportune times. And like you said, you know, there could be an event, an experience, whether it's loss of a job, it could be a health crisis, it could be a divorce, a disability, it could be a pandemic. And all of a sudden that, you know, whether it's that steady income or whatever it may be, causes you to be in a bit of a financial debacle. So the first thing I'm telling you to do is don't panic. Don't panic and don't make any immediate quick decisions. Sounds simple, but in that mode, it's frenzy, and you feel like you have to do something really quick, and that is really the last time that you want to do it. So that's first and foremost, is just do not panic. Try to block out the noise, especially with you know what we're going through right now with a pandemic, because so many people are going through it. There is never a one-size-fits-all answer or solution for anyone, which kind of dovetails into another tip, which is what works for, you know, your neighbor, your sister, your daughter, your parent may not work for you. So I think the most important thing to do is just stop, take a deep breath, and assess the situation, which brings me to the second thing, which nobody really loves doing, but it is so important, and it's write out a budget. How we think we kind of know. It's almost like, you know, why people want you to write out what you're eating if you're on a diet, because you think that you know what you're eating, but you really don't. Same thing with spending. So it's important to know what's coming in or not, and what's going out. So it's not just the bills, it's also what we're spending, because once you have an idea of what the picture truly looks like, whether it was prior to the issue or during the issue, then you're working with reality, and that's when you can make solutions. And it sounds simple, but I'll tell you why people don't do it. Beyond one, it's boring. It's that fear. I don't want to know. Is it worse than it is? And sometimes it's not, but even when it is, it will only help you to know. So I think that's really, really critical.
And are there specific resources that you suggest if somebody is to sit down and work on a budget? Like, is it do an Excel? Is it get out a pad and paper? Or like, what do you find
Yeah.
is the easiest thing for people these days?
So the easiest thing is what is going to work for that specific person. I know I am so old school. I'm a paper and a pen kind of person. I will write everything out. I'll go through and you know, case in point, I love spiral notebooks. So it could be creating an Excel worksheet. I have those types of templates created for people that that enjoy that. Or I also have PDF documents that are basically graphs that say, you know, different fixed costs, different expenditures, and then it all kind of comes together in a balance sheet at the bottom. There's also online software. Mint is mint.com is one that a lot of my clients really like. It's interactive. You can not only track a budget, but you can link, let's say, a checking account or a credit card. It doesn't mean that you can make transactions. It just means that as the checking account goes like this, the budget will go like this.
Okay.
So whatever works for whatever it is that you'll do that's efficient is what is the best option.
Okay, I think that's good advice. So let's assume that they've stayed calm. Now they get a financial picture. At least they have an understanding whether they like it or not. What do I do now?
Okay, so the next thing would be is to assess where we can save some money, where maybe things are slipping through the cracks. You know, I use the analogy of a boat. If you're out in a boat and it starts sinking, the first thing that you might want to do is look for holes that we can patch up so that we can stay afloat. So it's shocking how many holes we do have. First thing is go through maybe whether it's credit cards or checking accounts, wherever it is that you pay things out of. What do you have that's on auto renewal every month, every whatever it is that you're paying? Sounds kind of simplistic, but some of those things you may say, you know what, maybe I don't need this right now, whether it's a Netflix, a Spotify, a Massage Envy. Maybe you can put them on hold. Some things you might have even forgotten about. I actually I did a podcast like this recently, and I'm giving this advice, and I thought I better take it, better go check myself. And there was a podcast radio subscription. It was only $4.99 a month, but I don't even remember ordering it, and it just hits. I don't know how long it's been there. So just recapturing any auto fees like that. The second thing would be credit cards in general themselves. So they can be an amazing resource to pay bills, to make expenses, but they can also be a trap. And maybe we already have some debt on there because of the interest rate. So the first thing I would say is take a look at, you know, we've already assessed what we have. Is if you have a good amount of debt on there already, you may, two options. The first thing I would say is call the credit card company and ask them to lower the rate. 9 times out of 10, they'll do it because they want you to pay something. So if you have, especially if you have something really high, 19, 22, just call, lowball them, you know, which really, to me, that's advice for everything. And I'll get to that in a moment, but find out if you can at least lower the rate. They will usually do that. And you may also want to find a 0% APR credit card that doesn't charge a big fee to roll that balance over. If it's a big balance, to give you just a little bit of breathing room, because with credit card debt, you know, it's this cycle of the debt's building, even if you're not adding to it because of that interest rate. So if we're already struggling to meet the needs of just our household expenses, and that debt is building, you know, this is why you see sometimes great people who are well-meaning and responsible get into these debt issues. So that's the second thing is definitely credit cards. And maybe there's a place that you can you have a home equity line with a really low interest rate, you may want to look into paying off high credit card balances with that. And now you're at least not incurring that huge interest rate. So anytime we're not like getting bogged down in these big fees is huge.
Okay.
So that's a big one. And kind of piggybacking off of that is the negotiation itself. So
Okay.
I tell people everything, like almost everything is negotiable. If you have medical bills outstanding, dental bills, negotiate them. I negotiate my dental bills even on good days. So, if you owe the doctor or the office, call them, let them know what's going on. They want to get paid something. So there's a good possibility they'll either defer or chop the bill somehow or other. So I would try to negotiate things. From there, deferral of any type of debt that you can. Right now, because we're in such an unprecedented time, a lot of companies are offering this where you can, maybe the grace period is forgiven, or let's say you have 12 months left on a car lease. You can push that back 2 months, and instead of maybe your lease being up, let's call it May of next year, maybe it'll be July.
Okay.
So it's a matter of sitting down with the phone and making those phone calls. Really important though is to understand the difference between debt deferral and debt forbearance.
Yes. Can you help with that one?
Absolutely. So forbearance, depending on your situation, can be helpful, but it can also be disastrous. So I'm seeing this with some mortgage companies right now. If I call and they tell me they'll give me a 2-month forbearance, so it's May 1st, and I get a forbearance of May, June. What that means is come July, I not only owe my July payment, but I owe May and June.
Right.
This may not be a good option if you don't expect to be on your feet by July.
Sure.
So in those calls, make sure that you're agreeing to a deferral or a grace period delay, and unless a forbearance may work for you, but that is important.
Okay. I think that's a good one. And I'm very concerned about people understanding that right now, because, I do believe people are asking for some forgiveness, and boy, you have to be able to get back up on your feet pretty good to be able to make 3 months of payments in 1 month.
Absolutely. So, which brings me to ask the question. Sometimes when it comes to money, nobody's comfortable talking about it usually. And there's this, we'll call it ego or pride, or just a feeling of embarrassment. Like, I should know what forbearance means. Trust me. Most people do not know what maybe you would think are common terms to everyone. They're not. So ask the question. It's better to feel a little silly than to make a mistake. That's just it's probably important life advice, but definitely when it comes to money, because we feel like, oh gosh, I'm embarrassed enough that I'm in a situation and now I don't know the answer to this. Just ask. That's what resources are there for. But pushing back any kind of debt that you can do is good. And then things like maybe you have a car, a renter's or a homeowner's insurance policy. It's a good time to take a look at those and maybe shop it, because you never know. What you think might be a decent rate, you shop it around and maybe you save $500 for the year for 6 months, depending on the state you're in. I'm in New Jersey. It could be a $3,000 swing.
Right.
So that's a good one. Maybe you want to raise a deductible for your, let's say, homeowners. If you have a $500 deductible, if you have a possible claim and it's $600, you're probably not going to put that claim in. So we would put in, if it was maybe $2,000-3,000. So why are we carrying a $500 deductible? Maybe raise that deductible to $1,000. might save you a little bit of premium money. So that's
Sure.
what a good agent is there to help guide you through. I try to advise my clients to work with an actual agent on
Okay.
things like that, because they're there to counsel you, not just take an order and sell a policy. But going through options, you don't necessarily want to cut your coverage because you don't want to get into a bad situation if something happens. But there could be ways to save money that way.
Awesome.
And another one, I'm just thinking, if you're renting and you're
Yes.
in a bind, you may want to call your landlord or property manager and ask
Okay.
them if you can use a portion of the security deposit for that month's rent, and maybe pay it back over the course of the year, or just work something out that way.
That's a great suggestion. All good opportunities, and frankly, probably not difficult or painful. Like, these are real opportunities that when you start looking at them and making a little effort, you can actually make some real progress in terms of minimizing
Absolutely.
your expenses.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anything else that you would suggest as a final step related to this kind of
Sure.
action plan, particularly, right after it happens?
So right after it happens is like I said, the most important thing is not to panic, but also to take time, once you've kind of started to get your bearings, and when I don't mean necessarily you're in the recovery, but rather than berating yourself and beating yourself up over it, is go, okay, how did this happen? Could it have been foreseen? Sometimes it could not have.
Right.
And to know that there are resources out there, whether it's credit counselors, and to ask a few people, for a helpful referral, because unfortunately, there's good advisors, good resources, and there's not so great. And you want to make sure that you're doing things that aren't going to cause more harm. So, sometimes we want to borrow from a retirement plan, a 401k,
Right.
an IRA. Just make sure that you know everything that is associated with that. Sometimes that's a loan that you'll have to pay back. Sometimes there's a penalty involved in that.
Sure.
So it may not always be the most efficient if there are other places. Home equity lines of credit, I'm a big proponent of having that available, just as some extra credit, extra available sources of funds. And, just when you do come out, is the first thing is pay yourself first, make savings a priority. It really is important.
Awesome. Well, I think those are all really actionable and really, really good advice. Stay calm, get clear about, the money you're spending, what's coming in, what's going out. Look for ways to reduce expenses immediately. And I think the great advice of just start asking people for help, asking people what your options are, asking questions about how things will work. That actually is exactly the nature of where this series came from, because too many times people seem, I don't know, afraid or fearful of asking the questions, and embarrassed. And I think the truth of the matter is the longer that the time goes on and things are outstanding and getting worse and worse, I think sometimes the more difficult it is to get help, like to get people to forgive or to give you some grace and things like that. So I really do appreciate it. Hey, Traci, it was great having you part of our series. This was the first video that we've done, and I love having you as our guest. We're going to hopefully do one more next week where we can talk a little bit about maybe managing your budget and how to actually manage debt and expenses. For those folks who might be out there listening this week, if you have questions that you want us to ask an expert, I would totally encourage you to please get in touch with us. You can reach us on our Facebook account, on our Instagram account, through Twitter, and we would be happy to line up further series to be able to have those discussions. Okay, so that's all I have for this week. Again, I'm Sabrina DeVito from Best Egg, and I thank you, Traci, and I hope everybody stays happy and healthy.